Welcome to a Millennial's Guide to Real Estate Investing. Here is your host, Antoine Martel.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast. Today I have a special guest, Jonathan Frausto. He's a nurse who's also a real estate investor. He actually just graduated from nursing school last week, and he's here today to talk a little bit about how it was investing while being a full-time nurse and going through nursing school, and how he was able to, with little money, invest in real estate and start his real estate investing career. So welcome, Jonathan, and thanks for coming on today.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I'm pumped. I'm pumped to be here.
So let's start it from the very beginning, and I guess, how did you first get into real estate? What brought you into real estate? What made you interested in investing in real estate? And what did your first deal look like?
Well, I have always been around it, specifically because my old man, my dad, he's been doing it for the past 10 years. He started on the crash of '08, and I've just been kind of around him the whole time and kind of absorbing as much as I can. And at the time, it was, he would say, come on, Jonathan, take a look at this and, do this here and there. And at the time, I was still young, and I'm like, oh, Dad, I don't want to, I want to play with my friends. I want to do things. Now I'm just like, holy cow, man, I'm so glad you dragged me out of there.
Yeah.
So I've always been around it. And it wasn't until I first started going to school to be a nurse, and I failed. Okay, I failed the program. I couldn't get the grades that I wanted.
Oh, wow.
And I had a family. So I'm just like, oh, well, they got to eat. It's no longer just me. So I had an epiphany moment where my back was against the wall, and I had no choice but to swim. And that's when I started. And immediately when I found out I failed, I immediately went on the MLS, and I'm like, all right, it's time to swim.
And what was your dad doing in real estate? Was he an investor or a real estate agent, or what was he?
No, he was he's an investor. He also has his own business entity. He deals with single family homes.
Okay.
And now he's kind of shying away from that. 1,000 single family homes is 1,000 problems unless you have a property manager. So he's moving on to bigger and better things. He's working on syndication and multifamilies now.
Okay, nice. And then so got kicked out of the nursing school, or failed out of the nursing school. Then you had to go and do your first deal. So what did that first deal look like? Did you have funds to, how did you fund that first deal? Or did you get into wholesaling? Or, kind of how did you, once you found something on the MLS, what did you do with it?
I did wholesaling. That was, for me, I had a little cash reserved, and I went on MLS, and I just made a decision where I'm just going to put out offers. I don't care how lowball they are. If they accept them, they accept them. If they tell me to go kick rocks, then they tell me to go kick rocks.
Yeah.
And the way I funded it was I had to borrow it. I had to put down earnest money. I didn't have the earnest money at the time, so I had to raise the earnest money. And I structured the deals, very similar to what I do now. I do private money. I say, okay, here, I need, $3,000 for the earnest money. I'll give you 15% return on it. And I'm looking at maybe a 1 or 2 month time frame. And for most people, which I started with just my family and friends, yeah. Grant Cardone even says, start with your power base, people, your family and friends that you deal with on a daily basis. And that's what I did. I went to my family and I said, look, I have this property. The deal is good. I'm going to wholesale it. There's plenty of meat on the bone. I need $3,000. I'll give you 15% interest, and I'm looking at a 1 to 2 month time frame.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and similar to that, I mean, with what Grant Cardone was saying too, and what I'm talking about on a future podcast too, is start with. People ask me how I funded my first deal, and I say, well, for me, it was funded by my dad because he was with me throughout the whole process of learning about real estate investing, kind of side by side with me learning, right? And then by the end of it, once he had the same knowledge base as me, I just went to my father and said, okay, well, let's do this first deal, and you fund it. I don't have any money, of course. And that's what I say too. And start with, it doesn't need to be your dad or your rich uncle or whatever, but find that person who has a couple $1,000s who you can pay a little bit of interest and bring them into your deal, give them knowledge and give them value, and then provide them something where they can use that knowledge and value and invest a little money and make some money. So that's super important. And especially, people like us who are young, millennials who don't have much money, it's about building that power base around you to go and raise that, even if it's a couple $1,000s, like you said, for the earnest money. There's people around you who have that kind of money who you can go and approach to get those funds.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then explain the first deal. So you found a deal then on the MLS, you had somebody come in with the earnest money for 1 to 2 months, and you you put it under contract and then just had to find a buyer. And how did you go about that whole process as well?
Man, okay. So my first deal, it went too perfect. Like it went so perfect where I didn't learn anything. Yeah. It scared me a little bit. It went too good where I didn't really learn anything. I didn't learn the worst case scenario. But I found it on MLS. I put an offer on it. I think I was in it, if I can remember, I was going to buy it for $34,000, and it was like a 3-1, really bad shape. Needed about a good, I don't know. At the time, I looked at it as, dude, this thing needs like $60,000.
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was bad. And honestly, I've had a lot of success on Craigslist, and that's how I sold this property.
Wow.
I listed it at Craigslist. I listed it for, I think I put it up for like 50. At the time I was young, I was naive, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to make as much money as I can on this, because I knew I had a deal. I knew what the ARV of the property was. And it never turned out that way. I never got what I intended to make. I always had a target price. Yeah, I got to walk away with, $15,000 off of this. And it never, even to this day, it never worked out that way. But I made $10,500 on this deal. And I sold it to a gentleman on Craigslist who was buying it for a friend. His friend getting kicked out or something, and he wanted to buy it for a friend, and they'll fix it up themselves. And I found all this on Craigslist, and it went really smooth. It went too smooth. And the next one was just, now I started to get the hiccups.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I guess for people who are listening who don't know what wholesaling is and what ARV is, could you explain a little bit in what those things are?
Yeah. So ARV is the after repair value, and what I kind of categorize it is after you do all the rehab. After you want to put in the flooring, you want to redo the kitchen, the market determines what the ARV is based on similar aspects. Like if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, you have to look at other 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses in your area with a relatively similar square footage, and you see what the other houses are selling for. If they're selling for, you have about 5 of them that are selling for about 180, which in our area, that's what they're selling for now. Then you know that, okay, whatever I buy this for, I know that the house is worth $180,000 once I'm all said and done. That's what people are willing to pay for it.
Yep.
For the wholesale, I categorize it as being the middleman. As a wholesaler, your job is to get these deals, get good deals, okay? Get deals cheap enough where you can do something about it. Meaning you can sell it to another investor who wants to flip it, maybe who has it as a rental, or you can sell it to somebody who, wants to put in their own sweat equity, which is what I've done a couple times, and the other times I've done it to investors. I've done it both ways. Yeah. But you're the middleman. It's important that there needs to be enough meat on the bone. You have to buy it cheap enough to sell it, or you just got to take a little bit less profit at the end of the day. But you're just the middleman.
Yep, exactly. Okay, great. Awesome definition. And yeah, for me too, so you're buying properties from the MLS, so you're making a bunch of offers, just low priced offer, just see how low you can get these people. You finally get one, put it under contract, and then to get your buyers, you're going and listing that property for a higher price on Craigslist, and then you make money on the difference. So you buy a property from the MLS for $30,000, you put it on Craigslist for $40,000. Somebody buys that paper that you have to buy that property, and you make the difference.
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I do.
Yep. Okay. So that first deal, so you bought, so how many properties did you go through on the MLS? How many offers did you make on the MLS before you got that first deal? Or do you have a specific number of how many offers you had to put out there in order to get that first deal?
I don't know the exact number. I just know that I made a commitment to myself to say every day I'm going to dish out one offer. I found a real estate agent. Yeah. I found a real estate agent who I actually went to high school with, and I sat her down and I said, look, this is what I plan to do. If you're okay with it, then let's rock, because we're going to win. You know, we have the persistence and we have the mentality. We're going to get this done. You just got to be on my team. And I think finding an agent, if you're going to put offers in on the MLS, is huge. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't want, you know, it's their reputation. They don't want to be known as the lowballing realtor, which is fine. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But I wanted a realtor with an investor's mindset, with a winning mindset, that wanted to be on my team, that said, look, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. So she was okay with it. And every day I needed to put at least one offer in every day. And I think it was about 2 weeks where I landed the deal.
Wow. That's pretty quick. Yeah. And I love that too, and love the hard work and, you know, all that stuff that we don't hear about that goes into actually getting a deal, right? And for me, the story I tell, which is pretty similar, is when I was building my first team out of state in Memphis, Tennessee. I would call 5 or 10 real estate agents a day, and kind of like you, I would go and pitch them, hey, this is exactly what I want to do. Do you want to be part of my team? I'm going to buy, 1 to 2 deals a month, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I called 100, 200 agents in Memphis, was calling all the new listings that were coming up that were for distressed properties. And, it's all about the numbers and doing stuff that other people aren't going to do. And being persistent, right? And just keep going and never giving up, no matter how many agents tell you that it's a terrible time to invest in real estate. You just keep calling and keep calling. So I love that. So then so you got that, you finished that first deal, and then you were saying that one went very successful, and then you had some other deals after that, which had some hiccups. So how were you still funding those other future wholesales in the same way that you were funding the ones at the beginning? Did you find some more money outside of your close circle, or was the funding still coming from that close circle you had around you?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, once people start seeing your success, and now that you're credible, okay, that was huge for me. When I think your first deal is the hardest deal, because there's a lot of unknowns. And then, if you're trying to raise the capital, a lot of people are just like, oh, I don't know, you've never done this before. How do I know I'm going to get my money back? Or how do I know you're not going to run away with it? So there's a lot of, iffy things. So the first deal was the hardest to get started, but things started kind of falling into place. People started noticing. And I talked about it all the time. Anytime I was at a family party, anytime I was at a friend's party, and I'm sure I got annoying. I'm sure people were like, oh, Jonathan, man, this is the real estate kid. And, he keeps talking, that's all he wants to talk about. But I was okay with that, and as millennials, for us, there's a lot of friends that they don't understand and they don't want to understand. But I continue to raise the earnest money. With my wholesaling, there's 2 ways that I know of to do it. You can either do a double close in transaction A, transaction B, or I was doing just assigning the paper. And all I needed was just to raise the earnest money. And I tried different people. I tried my father-in-law. He came in a couple times. I tried a couple friends. They came in a couple times. And that's just, I was having a lot of success with it, and I didn't want to, if it wasn't broke, I didn't fix it.
Exactly.
And awesome. I just kept multiplying that, and it worked out very well.
Awesome. And then so you did wholesaling for how long, and then what happened after? Because you eventually ended up going back to nursing school. So how long did you take that break to do the wholesaling, and did you just make enough money to kind of live, and then you were like, okay, it's time for me to go back to school? And kind of how long were you doing that wholesaling for?
I did wholesaling for about a year. this is only my second year in real estate. All through 2017, I just did wholesale. I did full-time wholesaling for about 6 months. And then once the next semester came up, I got back into it. And I was repeating. So I knew I can still kind of do wholesaling because I knew when I was repeating in nursing school, I was just going to see the same topics again. So I knew it was going to be slightly easier just because I was seeing it for the second time. So I was just like, you know what? Let me continue to do both things full time. As the years got on, I passed that semester and I'm on my last semester. Things got a lot tougher, and I started keeping my properties, and that was unknown to me because I was used to wholesaling, and I've never been used to actually keeping it, closing on the deal, putting in the rehab, getting in the contractors. So it got to a point, and luckily I was very blessed to have my dad, and he ended up taking the role of property manager or project manager. Yeah. He said, you know what, Jonathan, I want you to concentrate on school. Awesome. And let me take over this property right here. Because what a lot of people don't know, and what TV doesn't, highlight on this, is that real estate's not like a part-time thing. I mean, you can do it, but once you're getting to these big projects, man, I mean, you got to dedicate a lot of time. You got to have a lot of focus on it. Mm-hmm. And it requires a whole lot of your energy. I mean, I was at the property for like 16 hours a couple days. Wow. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I hear that, all the time. I mean, being a nursing student is full-time too. And, so is having a full-time job and, getting out of college and working full-time. And, I hear people who want to, flip houses, whether it be locally where you are. So Jonathan's in Chicago, so he was actually doing deals in his own neighborhood. But, many people where I am here in Los Angeles who graduate and now have full-time jobs, and they want to be, a real estate investor and do their own deals. And whether that be doing BRRRR projects out of state or flipping houses out of state, it just becomes impossible, in my opinion, to handle all that and manage all that unless you have those people on the ground. But even building, that team, you're lucky that, you're doing stuff locally and you have family who can take over while you have to go and finish what you need to do, right? But people like me who are here in LA who may have graduated, got a full-time job, want to invest out of state, it becomes very difficult to build that team out of state and then begin to do deals. So you had your dad step in kind of when you were finishing nursing school. And were you spending any time on that business? Were you still was school from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then you would do some stuff at night with your father? Or were you able to, in between classes, do certain things? Or how did your days and weekends look during that time?
It was misery, is what I could say. It was absolutely misery. For those of you who don't know nursing or know somebody who went through nursing school, there is a lot. I mean, I was in there for about 3 years, and those 3 years, you kiss your friends goodbye, kiss your social life goodbye. I mean, it's a lot of studying. I mean, you get left behind very quickly. So at the time, probably the last, probably since August of 2017, I started slowly stepping back, and my dad took over the project full time. It was a duplex, and he took it over full time because I just wasn't getting things done. I didn't have enough time. I was in school, and you have to do clinical hours, hands-on experience at the hospital. And I was getting back at 9 o'clock at night. And at the time, I'm just like, well, man, I still got to call the plumber. I still got to call this guy. There's just, I needed either an assistant or I needed, somebody project manager. So January of this year, I completely kind of stepped back, and I had my dad take the reins. And I would do some marketing here and there, but it wasn't as intense as what I was doing. I'd put a couple offers, but maybe I'd put an offer maybe once a week, if lucky. But I started stepping back 100%. And like I said, my dad he's a rock star because he came in and he took over.
Yeah. And then so how many deals have you guys done and kept on your own, and how have you been funding those deals? Because remember, you were even raising the earnest money from other people's money. So how did you go from doing that to actually funding your own deals? Did you take that cash that you were making with wholesaling and then invested in your own deals because you had saved up, or how did that look?
I wish I would have used the money from wholesale. But I got married last year, and that was also another reason why I needed wholesaling to do a quick cash.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to buy my wedding. So my wedding was 100% paid off, but now I have nothing. So I'm starting from scratch. So I had to raise the money again. I had a little bit more credibility because I did a year's worth of wholesales, and I raised the money. So I bought the duplex private money. I bought it for $62,000. This has been a nightmare project. I mean, I walked in here and I was like, look, man, I can do this for 20 or 25 to 30 grand. That went out the window almost immediately. Now we're about month number 6 in rehab, and it's a completely brand new home. New roof, new gutters, brand new rough and plumb. We redid the whole electrical from fuses to breakers, which is what the standard is now. And, the fuses are old and the breakers are what's new. We had to update the cable outside because the cable was an old cable that couldn't handle the amps that our company's ComEd, that's our supplier for electricity, that ComEd couldn't. The cord was not strong enough. It's a brand new home, and now we're probably about 40 grand of rehab into it. So we're sitting at about 100 grand, and my window is starting to get a little bit more smaller because I know the property is maybe worth 130, 135.
Wow.
But like I said, one of my investors, we had a deal, and if I was going to cash out everybody, and he was the only one that actually wanted his money to work a little bit more longer term. Usually when I raise the money, I tell him 6 to 9 months. But this guy was like, you know what, I can do a 1 to 2 year, maybe 3 year. And I'm splitting my cash flow with him until he gets paid off, and then I'm keeping the rest.
Got it.
But that was a little bit of assurance for him because I can say, hey, you know what? Let me get it in writing that I will pay you a percentage of my cash flow until you're paid off, and that's how you can secure your money.
And did that investor actually come up with the overages? Because you budgeted 25 grand. Now it's at 40. Who came up with that extra $15,000?
He did.
He did. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And then what do you typically pay these investors? Is there any other methods that you've used to find this private money?
Typically the structure is it's 12 to 15% depending on how much. For this case, it's 15% with this guy. I schedule a term of 6 to 9 months, hey, and I'm going to pay you in one lump sum. I'm not paying you every single month because I want all the attention to be on the project. I want to focus on the project. You want me to focus on the project. You don't want me to diddle-daddle over here. So you want all my attention to be on the project. I don't want to be in the position where now I'm scavenging for more money. Now I got to go raise the more money. So I make sure I have enough. And I say, look, you invest 60 grand. I give you 15% return on that. It's a 15% yearly, and I pay you in one lump sum at the end. Okay. So what I've been doing is it's a BRRRR, like you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it out, and you refinance. So when the bank comes in, because it doesn't have a mortgage right now, and I got to put a mortgage on it, I get cash back to pay out everybody. But in this case, I'm not going to have enough. So this investor was okay saying, okay, well, let me just let's split it. Let's split the cash flow.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. And for some ways that I've found that private money is actually just networking on Bigger Pockets. Do you use Bigger Pockets at all?
Oh, I use it all the time.
Yeah, man. I know. It's amazing. So you could create an account. I would recommend creating an account. There's forums with every single question you could think of about real estate or real estate investing. If you're thinking about it, it's already been answered there. And I'm not sure if you use this tool, but there's a network tab, and you can actually just send direct messages to people who are around you. And it shows like a little bio about what they do and what they've been doing in real estate. So I used to go and just message people on there, and you can send them your package if you're looking to raise money for a deal, especially if you're doing deals locally and people know the market and can actually go and you can take them out for coffee or take them out to go and see the project and what you're going to do and meet the contractor, right? So that's a pretty good way to go and raise that money. And I've used it a couple times in the past, but not sure if you've ever used that to raise money for your deals.
I've never used it to raise money. I've only used it to advertise when I was wholesaling.
Got it,
to
yeah.
advertise my properties, or it's a super resourceful thing. Any question you literally have in your head, it's on. I can guarantee you, it's probably already on there.
Yeah.
Or you might be the first, but you're gonna have a bunch of people start throwing down their input, like, oh, maybe you should do it this route because I did it that way and it didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It's an awesome resource.
Yep, I love it. So then that goes back to, well, I guess, how did you learn about, you use words like ARV and, wholesaling, and, it's not a very simple process to learn, and especially to get the paperwork and all that. So what was it, your father who helped you and introduced you to that, and actually was your knowledge base, or was it something like Bigger Pockets, or how did you learn about real estate and what ARV was, or even what wholesaling was?
I got like the basics from my dad. He was doing it. I was kind of watching him, but I got a majority of them. I'm a huge fan of podcasts.
Yeah.
I follow the real estate guys. I follow Joe Fairless, the Bigger Pockets. Theirs is huge also. And a lot of it is you have to know the lingo. If you're trying to start out, you have to be able to talk apples to apples with somebody else, another investor. And it's important to don't lie. Don't act like, oh man, I know about all this. Because any normal savvy investor will kind of call you out on it, and it'll be a little fishy. Mm-hmm. So as a young person, it's kind of tough because, it's tough for a wiser gentleman, maybe 60, 70, to truly have faith in a young guy like myself.
Yep.
So you have to really understand the terms and just try to educate yourself in any means possible, man. We have to be able to keep a conversation where if I say, hey, what's the ARV? I expect you to know it. Or, hey, what's my cap rate? I expect you to kind of at least understand what a cap rate shows me. What's my cash on cash? So education is the foundation of what everything else piles on top of. And it's super, super important. You have to know the lingo.
Yep, exactly. And there was actually some infographic or photo that was, there was 3 columns: money, time, and knowledge. And the top of it said you only need 2 of those. And, many of us being millennials, we only have time, and we have to get the knowledge because we don't have money. And knowledge is way easier and it's cheaper to get than money. So like you said too, and I had some issues too when raising money, 23-year-old raising $100,000 for a deal and going to a 50, 60-year-old who has a wife and has kids and has a retirement account, and I'm asking for it. Right. So you need to build that rapport right away, and you need to have that knowledge, and you need to know more about real estate than that person does. And they may have been investing for many, many years. So I don't know if you had any trouble, being young as well and being a millennial trying to raise money. Did you ever have any pushback from investors?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the nature of the business. Sometimes some people are just scared to invest money. I used, and I call it borrowed credibility, is I would use my dad. He was a huge mentor to me.
Exactly.
And, especially in the beginning, I was borrowing a lot of money from friends and family, especially family. And they knew that my dad has been doing it for about 10 years. So I said, you know what? My dad's going to be overlooking the project. My mentor's going to be overlooking the project. He signs off on it. So I'm not just a new guy. I have somebody who's done it before, who's kind of overlooking everything that I'm doing.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that helped a lot. It helped a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and especially when you start in your inner circle and raise money from those people, from family members or close friends. You raise money from those people, the deals go successful, and then you use those people as referrals too. If you don't have a mentor, right? So you can say, oh yeah, well, you can go and ask these 3 people who have invested in my last couple deals, ask them about the process and how it went, and you can use those people too as leverage, where they might not be successful investors, but they're successful investors with you, and they could say good things. And referrals are still terrific and a great way to get more money and have more people come and be involved with your business.
Oh, absolutely. And I would strongly advise anybody to get a mentor, some sort of person who's done it before, and not
Yeah.
just done it, but done it successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
important.
yeah, I would not do anything without a mentor by my side.
Yeah.
It's just you're cutting a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and one way that I've found to find those mentors is again through Bigger Pockets, and go to that network tab, type in your zip code, find investors who are around you who have been doing it for 10 or 20 years, who are doing exactly what you want to do. And there's going to be somebody around you who's done exactly what you want to do. Find that person, ask them if you can take them out for coffee or for lunch. Just be a sponge and ask them all the questions, and then, reach out to them a couple weeks later and ask to take them out again. And, just keep using these people as wealth of information, and let them know what you want to do, show them you're hungry, and hopefully you can have a mentor too.
Sure. I mean, even if you don't have the cash to take these guys out for dinner, I mean, even if somebody asks me, hey, put me to work, and if
Yeah,
you can just teach me, hey man, I got a lot of properties that I need somebody to take out some garbage. You come in and take out some garbage for me. I'll teach you a couple things.
yeah,
So if
good
you're
point.
you have to be eager. You have to be eager. You want to work. Come work for me for free, and I'll throw some knowledge for you.
Exactly. Good point. Good point. So how many properties are you holding right now? Now that you're done with nursing school, I bet you're pretty excited on what's to come. So are you actually going to go and pursue that? I mean, hopefully you are, now that you graduated. And are
Yeah.
you going to go and are you going to go and be working full time? How is that going to affect your real estate? What's your plan now that you're done and graduated? And what do you want to do?
Well, my plan is right. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Right now, we have two projects that are currently in rehab. One of them was a 2-1 that we converted to a 3-1, and that should be done in about the next week, ready to be rented out. This duplex, this duplex has been a nightmare, but hopefully about a month more. All the roughing and everything's done, so the last thing is all the interior, the paint, the drywall, kitchen, bathroom, all to make things look nice. And what I'm really doing is I love nursing, but I know I don't want to retire as a nurse. I see some of these nurses in the hospital, and they just look miserable.
Yeah,
And me, I like having options. I like knowing that, okay, if I want to be a nurse, I can do a nurse, but if I don't want to, for whatever
exactly.
reason, I can move on to real estate, which is what my plan is. I made a commitment to myself to say I'm going to be a nurse for about 10 years. I'm going to use the money that I make from nursing to fund my real estate, to kind of grow my egg. So right now we're just focusing on buying and holding. And hopefully my goal is within 10 years, I got to get up to $10,000 of cash flow a month. That's my
Awesome.
goal.
Good. That's a really good goal. So those two deals that you have right now, are you planning on doing a cash out refinance? Are you planning on and holding them long term, or are you gonna sell them? What's your plan with those?
It's the BRRRR strategy.
Okay.
So I plan on refinancing them. Once they get
Okay.
done, I'll put a tenant in there. Some banks require a seasoning period.
Yep.
Usually that's about a 6 months, most likely a year. But
Can you explain what a seasoning period is?
So a seasoning period is, so you want to refinance, you want to put a mortgage on there. So you have to have a tenant in the property. It has to be cash flowing for a certain length of time. Some banks, in my area, most banks are about a year. So before you can even put a mortgage on that property needs to be rented out for at least a year before this bank even comes in and decides, hey, we're going to put a mortgage on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's something that's skipped over in a lot of those those BRRRR blogs or BRRRR forums that I read, that people don't realize that, okay, if you're going to buy, for example, your duplex, what are the numbers for your duplex? How much do you buy it for in rehab?
Oh man, I'm embarrassed. I bought it for 61.
Okay.
I bought it for 61. Right now we're about 40 grand of repair. So
Yeah.
right now we're about
Around 100.
100.
Okay.
Yeah, around 100.
Yeah, so let's say somebody wants to do this BRRRR strategy, right? So they buy a duplex for $60,000, then they put $40,000 into it, and let's say they want to do it with their own cash, right? They don't have any rapport, and they have to get $100,000 to do this project. So that's $100,000 of your own money that's sitting there for 6 to 12 months that you can't do anything else with. And, it's, whereas you can go and use that money and, buy turnkey rental properties and buy 10 properties tomorrow that are all cash flowing. Instead of having all of your funds or having other people's funds that you have to pay interest on, sitting there for 12 months. And I think it's something that's skipped a lot when I hear about how great the BRRRR strategy is. It's capital intensive, right? And that's just for one deal. Imagine if you wanted to do five deals a year, 10 deals a year. Well, that's a whole lot of money that you have to raise or pay interest on, that you have to wait those long periods. And even I've called all the big banks about their seasoning periods, and there's only one bank that has 6 months of seasoning. The other banks, like you said, are all 12 months. Maybe some local banks can lower that, but it's a very capital intensive thing. And you're also banking on that appraisal to come back well and good, or else, all of that money that you put into that deal, you may not even be able to pull that out. So it's something that I just think has been skipped over a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And especially if whether you have an LLC or your name is doing it, some banks are not LLC friendly.
Yep.
And that's what I'm starting to kind of realize. And I've had a lot of success on these little bit smaller banks rather than like using these head honcho branches that I've been using a lot of the smaller ones, the less known, the more local guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some of them don't like business entities to do the refinance.
Yeah, they won't even. So especially the big banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they won't actually even give you a loan to your LLC. It's just a Fannie Mae requirement that it needs to be in a personal name. So, you have to do a quitclaim deed if your property's owned in an LLC, which pretty much changes the ownership from that LLC to your personal name. And then you're finally able to get a loan on that property after the seasoning period. So yeah, it becomes super tricky, and there's a lot of other quirks. And then especially so for your cash out refinance, for example, you've been a student the last couple of years. So I'm assuming you don't have very much W-2 income, if any at all, right? So then what is your strategy, with that? How are you planning on getting around that? I know of one clause that may be able to get you around it, but what's your plan?
My plan is I have two. I'm going to either quit claim it to my dad, and he can pull a mortgage on it, or I'll quit claim it to his LLC.
Yep.
Or my first line of attack is I'm going to use my wife. I'm going to have her as an owner of the property on the deed of the property, and hopefully with her credit, because my credit took a dump, especially taking nursing school. You're not working as much, a wedding. I have kids, so they need to eat. So kids, food, and a bunch of other stuff. So my credit's not the best credit right now, which sucks. Okay, that's not the best case scenario for me. So I have to try to be resourceful. And my wife's credit is amazing, so we're gonna see what that does.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah, and that's something. And these are all the things that people don't think about when they buy that first BRRRR project. And I'll be honest, when we did too, we bought. So remember, I was trying to build this team in Memphis, Tennessee, out of state, because California just doesn't make any sense for cash flow. Built this team out of state. Our goal was to BRRRR these deals. We bought this property, rehabbed it. Then we're like, all right, we're ready to do the refinance. We go to all these banks, and my plan, like your plan, because I was a student as well, I was enrolled in college still. My plan was, number one, to just, quit claim it to my dad or have my dad's name on the loan, and just do the refinance under my dad's name. Well, it turns out my dad owns his own business and runs everything through his business. He doesn't have any W-2 income, and he hadn't been taking any. So he was making all this money with his business. He's running his own business, making money there, but not taking any money out for the government to see on the W-2. And so the bank turned down our loan, and then we're there holding the bag with his property, with our own money sitting there. And now it's like, okay, what do we do? And we've resorted to to bringing in a private money lender who, again, kind of like your situation where we can just split the cash flow with them to be able to hold that property. We didn't really want to let go of it. We wanted some cash flow, but there's a lot of other quirks and things to think about when you're doing that BRRRR, and especially with the refinance. And the refinance not only on the appraisal, but also who's going to be on that loan, and is that person, financeable?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. One thing that I've learned in real estate, man, is you have to be super resourceful. You got to take these walls that you're going to hit, and you got to figure out a way around them.
Yep.
You don't want to be caught dead. In my case, I'm going to have to figure out what to do. If I can't, refinance this property, I have to do something, because I have other people's hard-earned money in the deal.
Exactly. But that's also too what I love about rental properties and the BRRRR strategy, I guess, over like flipping houses, right? Because there's always multiple different exits. So one exit would be the thing goes well, you have your wife come in and you do a refinance, right? Another option would just be sell it on the open market. Another option would be to go to those buyers who you were wholesaling leads to and see if they want to buy something that's turnkey and already done and rent it out, right? So you have all these different options. Whereas if you're doing a fix and flip project, it's like, okay, option one, sell it on the open market to somebody to a family who wants to move in. There's not many times those properties you can't rent them out because they're not going to cash flow, and you're kind of stuck with only one option, really, in my opinion. Especially if you're doing a high-end flip or putting granite countertops and stainless steel stuff, those properties just don't cash flow and make sense cash flow wise.
Oh yeah, I think you nailed something that should be super highlighted. Is make sure there's multiple exit strategies for property. With me, anytime I had a property, I was looking at it, I made sure the numbers worked always. Can I wholesale this? If I have to keep it, can I flip it? If I have to super keep it, can I rent it out? And can I cash flow? How much is it going to cost me to cash flow? I made sure I had multiple exit strategies so I would never be caught dead in the water.
Yeah. Love it. And for me, still to this day, I've been investing for a couple years now. Still to this day, when I buy a little single family home for $30,000-$40,000, I still make sure that I'm happy with keeping it myself, with selling it to somebody else, and refinancing it out, right? So I have 3 or 4 exit strategies, and I want to be happy with all of those, or at least a couple of them, right? And be happy with my returns. And I like to look at it too. Not sure if you do this, but like that deals are plentiful, and I don't need to go in and do a deal just to do a deal. I want to do a deal that's going to be good and going to check all my boxes. And it only takes one bad deal to really, halt that bus, because not only is it going to take, your time and energy and your money, but there's also other people's money on the line. And that's what happens too when you're raising other people's money. It's other people's retirement accounts, in your properties that you need to treat as your own capital.
Oh, yep. I 100% agree. A no deal is better than a bad deal.
Exactly. Love it. So are you gonna go and try to find a nursing job, and are you gonna continue then just buying properties in your local area and keep doing what you've been doing the BRRRR strategy? And are you going to be focusing on single family homes or duplexes? Which one do you like more?
Well, so far, this duplex has been a nightmare, so I'm kind of biased on that. But definitely multifamily is in my opinion, works better for me. But I mean, I'm okay taking a single family here and there. Yeah. I do plan to get a job as a nurse, and like I said, I'm only going to do it for like 10 years, maybe even less, depending on how fast I can grow my little egg. But I'm going to use that money from nursing to kind of fund these deals and build, my fund so I can start purchasing these things on my own, or at least feel a little bit more confident than when I raise the money privately. And for whatever reason, I hope this doesn't happen, but for whatever reason, if things hit the fan, at least I can pay the investors back a little bit. Yeah. And as of right now, I think I'm a little scared, man. I'm scared to invest out of state like you. I don't, there's just a lot of unknowns for me. And I know we want to move to Texas and, around the Austin area. And I don't know if you know, man, but Austin's beautiful, but it's super expensive. It's like Silicon Valley expensive.
Yep.
I went there just to look at a couple properties, and for a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, man, this thing was going for like 800,000 to 900,000.
Oh my God.
I was like, Jesus, this is this is crazy. So I'll probably still invest in Illinois if I move, maybe otherwhere, but I don't know. I'm too scared to invest out of state right now.
Yeah. And what's scary for you with investing in? Of course, Austin, Texas is super expensive, but have you looked at other markets in the Midwest, and what has scared you? Is it just because you're so comfortable with, your local area, all the streets like the back of your hand, and going into a new market like that where you don't know much and kind of have to start from ground zero, and learn everything?
That's exactly the reason.
Yeah.
Here in Joliet, I know the good areas and the bad areas, and sometimes it can be as simple as a street that divides it. One side of the street, oh, you don't want to invest over there, or this side of the street is a lot better. And I think that's huge for me. I don't know the area.
Exactly. Yeah, and for us too, I mean, when I first started investing, I was kind of pushed up against the wall. I wanted to invest in real estate, but here in California, unless you got $2 million in the bank, good luck. And so I was kind of forced against the wall, and I had to spend the time and energy. And you're right. I have to go out to these markets and learn these markets, and whether that's me on the ground or whether that's me calling 5 different property management companies, asking them what their favorite neighborhoods are, and then cross-referencing them against other property management companies, right? So kind of learning the neighborhood from a couple thousand miles away or 1,000 miles away, it's much more difficult. And yeah, you're never gonna know those streets or neighborhoods like the back of your hand, or like some place where you grew up and where you live. But leveraging people on the ground is what I've done to help learn those markets and learn them at a pretty fast pace. So what I used to do, or when I'm going into a new market, for example, I'll call property management companies, just type Juliet Property Management Company, and then I'll call all of those companies and I'll ask them, hey, I'm interested in investing in your market. Where do you guys like to manage properties the most, and what neighborhood should I stay away from? I'm looking at buying some properties on the MLS or whatever. You take notes on that phone call and learn about the different neighborhoods, ask them about neighborhoods that they like to manage and why. And then you just collect all that different data, and then you can, cross-reference it between all of those different companies, and you'll start to see a couple of different neighborhoods pop up again and again and again. And then you can really focus on those neighborhoods and learn about them. And that's what I've done to figure out those neighborhoods that I'm currently investing in my markets. And the property management companies want to manage properties, and they want to grow their business, right? So they want to manage properties that they like to manage, that are easy to rent out, that are in good neighborhoods, that have a good tenant pool, right? So they're going to, and they want to point you in the right direction so that you can come and bring them properties that they're going to say, oh, okay, we like this neighborhood, or we can easily rent this out, right? So that's what I've done to kind of get over that fear. And again, my back was against the wall. I had no other option. I had to go and learn, and that was the fastest way that I've found to go and learn a market and learn it from the people on the ground and take their knowledge. And many of these people have grown up or have been doing business in these places for many, many years. So they know all of these neighborhoods like the back of their hand, and they manage properties in these neighborhoods in these cities. So they have this whole aggregate of data that they can use and show to you about where you should be investing.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. And then also, not only the property management companies, but also real estate agents too are super important. Not only are they going to help you make offers on those deals, but they also can point you in the right direction and show you which neighborhoods you should be investing in for the type of deals you want to do.
Now I got a question for you, man.
Sure.
And me and my dad, we kind of have this conversation all the time. Is based on what you were saying, it sounded like you had a hustle, man. You have to call these people. There's nobody telling you how to do it. It's just there's something inside you that makes you want to do this. Now, as a millennial, I know a lot of my friends, man. They're still out there partying, drinking, and and we're different, right? We're different in the fact that that's not our priority. Our priority is building this portfolio or trying to be successful. But what do you think turned that switch on for you in your life where you became an entrepreneur? That mindset changed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I mean, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, I would say. My mom was an entrepreneur. She had many businesses growing up, and as a 8-year-old boy, she had a low carb health store where she was selling all these products, and it was a retail store for selling low carb food products, right? I would be there every day after school or during the summer, and I would be packing the shelves. I would be running the cash register. So I would say it's kind of born in me, and I was kind of always had that hustle in me to just work and just to help. And I loved working and I loved business. Just at a very young age, I would pick the plums off my neighbor's tree, put them in a cart, and go sell them for $1. I would do lemonade stands all summer long, right? In even middle school, I was selling candy to kids. I was selling soda because the school didn't sell soda, and I remember having a lunch table filled with dollar bills from all the soda that I had sold in one day, and the school eventually told me I couldn't be selling soda anymore. So, it's kind of born in me, but again, it comes from my parents, and my dad's always been an entrepreneur as well, but he just, he had a family he had to take care of, and he had to go to work, right? He had to start his business, which is consulting. So he's a full-time consultant, but again, he's under long contracts with these people, with these companies. And, he had to work and he had to go and travel and make it happen so that we can live and we can eat and he can put food and education into his kids. Right. So, but he's always been the type of person to be doing these different side projects or starting businesses. And, growing up, seeing his energy of going to work all day and then coming home and working on something else just to get rid of that full-time job that he's always wanted to do. And I guess that's what drives me, is just giving back to my parents and I guess living out my dad's dream of being an entrepreneur and starting his own business and not having to worry about taking care of his kids. Then that's kind of what drives me every day, is to just give back for everything that I've been given. Right. So for you, it's, you can wake up every morning and see your kids and, maybe that's what drives you, but, I don't have kids or a wife or anything like that. Right. So I'm just taking care of myself. But, for me, what drives me every day is just giving back and making sure that my parents can finally take a breather, and especially my dad can finally take a breather and come and work for this business that I've started, or wherever it may be.
Yeah, no, it's your surroundings from what I can tell.
Yeah,
and maybe even my dad was just like, when I graduated, he's like, yeah, you're probably happy that you graduated, but we're happy that we don't have to pay for you anymore. I was like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's. And the key is, how do we, because I was brought up very similar to your situation. I had a dad and he's had multiple businesses. Some has failed and some are still going strong, that it was just always in my surroundings. Yeah. So how would we bring that to people who are not as blessed as to have, a dad who can, hey dad, this situation popped up, what should I do?
Yeah.
Because there are people who are not as blessed as us.
Yeah.
And we're still young, so you're gonna have the people who are just like, oh man, I just want to party, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
But the key is, how do you flip that switch to say, I don't want to be like the masses. I want to be different. I want to be part of that 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
And it's hard, and I'm not sure there's an answer. I mean, it all comes from what your why is. And there's even a really good TED talk about the power of the why, right? So figuring out your why and what you want to do and what you want to be, and figuring out why you're doing it and who you want to do it for, to give up partying and drinking and hanging out with friends all the time and there's sacrifices that you have to make to start your own business. And yeah, you can't go out every weekend. You can't go drinking every weekend or even hang out with your friends some nights, because you're gonna have to be working, especially when you're starting your own business or even just investing by yourself. You got to be the accountant, you got to be the financial advisor, you got to be the contractor, you got to be the property manager. You got to wear every single hat under the sun in order to get your business started. And I think people need to find out what their why is and why they want to do certain things. And if that is real estate and real estate is your calling, then why is that your calling? And who are you doing it for? And it could be for yourself, but I think it's really powerful if you're doing it for something else.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Well, thank you we're at an hour now, so want to wrap it up. I know it's a fast hour, huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, so thanks very much for coming and talking. Is there any plugs you want to do? Any way that people can reach out to you and contact you?
Well, you can contact me anyway. I have a website, selljoliethousefast.com. Otherwise, you can email me at jfrausto, that's my last name, 2710@aol.com. I'm open to talk about anything.
Love it.
Any problems, if you want, whether housing, real estate, or even nursing. Shoot, we don't
medical advice.
Yeah, medical. No, you can't afford my medical advice. I'm expensive. But anything, man. If anybody has any questions regarding wholesaling or just anything wants to pick my brain, I'm all for it. All for it.
Love it. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. Again, thanks for coming on, and I hope that I can have you back on maybe when you're working full time as a nurse, and we can see if you have any other new projects and maybe get an update on how that refinancing went and what you actually, what actually ended up happening. So we'd love to have you on again. For everybody who's listening, thanks for listening to another episode. Hopefully going to have more amazing guests like Jonathan come back on who have figured it out as, millennials who want to invest in real estate. If you want to ask me anything, you can find me on all social media platforms, Martel Antoine. You can also go to the description of the podcast and ask some questions. There's a little form you could fill out if you have any questions for the podcast, or you can DM me on any platform. But thanks again, Jonathan, and we'll hopefully see you on a future episode.
Awesome. I look forward to it, man. Thank you.